Rawteur. Yo, did you hear? Chan-wook, the filmmaker behind Oldboy, HBO's The Sympathizer, and the executive producer on Snowpiercer, just got expelled from the Writers Guild of America West. Not suspended, expelled. And he didn't go alone. His Sympathizer co-creator Don McKellar was kicked out too. See, late Friday, the Writers Guild of America West confirmed it disciplined several members tied to the 2023 Writers Guild strike. Chan-wook and Don McKellar were expelled for doing writing work on the Sympathizer during the stoppage. But here's where I'm gonna be blunt, because I think the Writers Guild dropped the ball long before the strike ever started. I mean, yes, members were told that if the talks ever did break down after the strike authorization vote, the strike would happen right after their contract expired. But that's not the problem. See, the problem is they waited far too long to seriously confront the issues that mattered most: streaming residuals and AI protections. Now, when anyone in the business could see that there were these storms on the horizon coming for years in advance. See, by the time they finally sat down at the table in March of 2023, AI writing programs were already everywhere, and streaming had been underpaying actors, directors, and below-the-line workers for nearly a decade. And there's a reason those payments stayed so low for so long. You see, back in the 2007-2008 strike, the guild secured jurisdiction over new media work. Remember that term, new media? Well, it's what we now call streaming. But they had agreed to deep discounted rates because streaming was still seen as a niche experiment back then. Those pennies got locked into the minimum basic agreement and have been agreed and reapproved every 3 years since then. Now, negotiations in 2011, 2014, 2017, and then in 2020 all came and went without closing that gap, either because studios fought to protect those cheap rates or because the guild was prioritizing other wins. See, by the time streaming dominated TV, those low rates were baked into the system and the studios weren't ready to give them up without a fight. Now, some people will say, well, it all happened so fast. Maybe, but as I said, by the mid-2010s, we were already talking about things like peak TV and the ripple effects of cord cutting, another term I'm sure you're familiar with. See, the writing was already on the wall, and leadership at the Writers Guild didn't move until leverage had already been lost. And when you start a strike that late in the game, you're asking members to survive months without work, many without the savings to do it, while companies sit, these massive companies are sitting on a huge war chest, right? So even writers with hit credits ended up taking retail jobs, substitute teaching, driving rideshare, anything to keep the lights on. Some were worried about losing their homes. Others drained their retirement savings or maxed out credit cards. Additionally, you forgot to clap the like button. Yes, the Writers Guild of America has emergency assistance funds, and some members qualified for unemployment, but neither replaces a steady paycheck. See, now, none of that excuses the people who cross the picket line. Rules are rules, and solidarity only works if everyone honors it. But desperation is real, and if leadership hasn't prepared members for that kind of economic strain, if they haven't given them enough time to shore up their finances, then they've set the stage for desperation to win out. See, that's a leadership failure, and it deserves to be talked about, right? And even in 2023, when the guild finally delivered real streaming gains, they still weren't retroactive. So yes, actors and writers now get residuals and even viewership-based bonuses, but only for new projects going forward. Those old hits that you rewatch over and over, the ones topping the most watched list for years and years on end, they still pay nothing. Only the new stuff, the kind of stuff that essentially gets hate watched or review bombed, that's the only thing that qualifies. right? They also added an AI protections clause, which basically means a studio can't have an AI churn out a full script and then bring in a human to polish it and then skip crediting or paying that human as the actual author, which makes sense, right? Now, under this rule, the human is always credited as the author, no matter where or how the AI is used in the process. But even that's behind the curve. See, weeks ago, I told you guys that studios like Lionsgate and Netflix have already been partnering with AI firms to generate entire films, actors, writers, everything. And maybe you think, okay, and then you think, I just won't watch it. Cool. But maybe not the first one or the second one. But one day, you'll start watching something, you'll love it, and you'll find out later that it was AI generated. So you can avoid it for now, but it's coming. And unless there's an all-out war against AI in the near future, it's not gonna stop AI in entertainment. And honestly, I'm not signing up for any Terminator-style end-of-days war. I'm cool. Right? Now, when it comes to Park Chan-wook, he isn't just some niche art house guy. He's one of the most influential directors working, period. See, Oldboy won the Grand Prix at Cannes in 2004, which was the festival's runner-up prize, and this turbocharged his global profile. Park hasn't just flirted with the American system. He's been a part of it. He produced on Bong Joon-ho's film Snowpiercer and is credited as an executive producer on the US Snowpiercer TV series, which we know ran from 2020 to 2024, right? That's important because it shows he wasn't just visiting Hollywood. He was building a lane here. The 2023 Writers Guild of America strike ran 148 days, if I'm not mistaken, from about May to September. And it was over streaming residuals, minimum writing room staffing, and AI guardrails. The WGA strike rules say that during a strike, members don't write for signatory companies, right? The guild's constitution backs that up with teeth. Doing scab scripts or writing during a strike can get you punished up to and including expulsion. There's due process machinery, and the board can later approve some sort of readmission with conditions, but expulsion is essentially the nuclear option. Now, per the guild's notice and trade reporting, Park and McKellar kept working on the Sympathizer during the 2023 stoppage. Now, the WGA didn't spell out exactly which drafts or rewrites triggered the finding. You know, that's typically normal. They rarely publish play-by-plays, but the Strike Rules Compliance Committee investigated, sent cases forward, and the board imposed penalties. Being expelled doesn't mean Park and McKellar can never write again. It means they're no longer members and therefore can't work as WGA writers on covered projects for signatory companies. Essentially, every major US studio and streamer, unless they're readmitted. That blocks the straightest path to HBO, Netflix, Disney, Amazon, etc. on US productions. It doesn't stop them from working on non-signatory or foreign projects, festivals, or national industries outside of the Writers Guild of America jurisdiction. Basically, they're blackballed, right? That's just what it comes down to. It's a public blackballing. Now, readmission is possible by board action, but it's not automatic, and reputationally, the scab label, that's going to stick with them. Unfortunately for them, enforcement only works if the people actually believe that the rules will be enforced, right? Now, if you know Park from Snowpiercer, the show that just wrapped its 2020 to 2024 run, his expulsion doesn't retroactively touch those credits. It does complicate any future EP/showrunner writer role he might want on another US series. Because signatory companies need Writers Guild of America writers for covered services. No membership, no covered writing. Unless and until the board lets you back in. So basically, if it's a guild covered project, he can't write on it, all right? So Hollywood is more international than ever, and the labor structure is still deeply American. That creates awkward, high-stakes questions for non-US creators. If you join the Writers Guild of America for one HBO show, are you binding your whole global career to US union rules going forward? Do you risk expulsion for decisions made under different funding regimes, schedules, or release pressures abroad? Essentially, like, if there's another strike and you're accepted into the guild, but you live overseas, and you keep working, do you get expelled? And being that, we're such a global society now, does that basically exclude you from the movies that are being produced in your homeland, if you're international? So it is a complicated situation. Now, Park's case doesn't answer any of those questions, but it raises them into the neon lights. On the flip side, tough enforcement can strengthen the WGA's hand in a world where studios might be tempted to hopscotch borders during some of the strikes, right? If they know the guild will publicly punish violations, celebrity or not, the next strike is less leaky. There will be less scabs, right? And that tends to lift standards for everyone who does play by the rules. So in the short term, there's zero change to the Sympathizer. It already aired and nothing's going to be pulled from the catalog. In the medium term, you might see fewer Park written or McKellar written US projects for a while. Their non-US work is unaffected as long as it's not underneath any of the Writers Guild project. As long as it's not covered by any of the Writers Guilds. Long term, expect studios to be more cautious about how international writers are contracted and supervised during labor disputes, because paper trails will be tighter and violations will be a lot riskier. Now, the silver lining is that expulsion is a tattoo that can fade, right? Under the Writers Guild Constitution, the board can readmit expelled members with conditions and fines. Historically, it's rare and takes time, contrition, and politics. That means if Park or McKellar want back into the WGA covered US TV projects, there is a path, but it runs through a board decision, not a press release. Professionally, Park will keep moving forward. He and McKellar share screenplay credit on Park's next Korean feature, No Other Choice, which is Venice-bound this month. That's a non-WGA context, so the guild action doesn't touch it. It does, however, underline how Park can keep thriving outside the US pipeline while the WGA door remains shut. The headline names are juicy, but the real plot is enforcement. The 2023 strike was long and expensive and successful. Now, if the guild shrugs off violations after a win, it invites the next strike to have leaks as well. Making high-profile examples is ugly, but it's part of how unions protect the contracts they just fought for, right? So for international auteurs working in the US, that means learning the rulebook before the ink is dry on a deal memo. For studios, it means no workarounds with overseas partners when the picket lines come out. Bottom line, Park Chan-wook getting expelled isn't a referendum on his artistry. It's a referendum on jurisdiction. The Writers Guild of America just reminded everyone that if your show is in the Hollywood sandbox, you play by Hollywood's labor rules, no matter what passport sits in your desk drawer. And they did it loudly enough that the echo will hang around until the next contract fight. Now, do you think the punishment fits the crime, or is this just the cost of doing business when leadership waits too long to act? Let me know in the comments, and for more behind the scenes insights just like this, check out this video right here.